I'm here with John Hagel, founder of Deloitte Center for the Edge, and the people that the smartest organizations and individuals inside those organizations go to learn about how to improve competitiveness and kind of thrive. The interesting thing about this conversation is that I started off talking about started off researching work and the whole area of work. And one of the first things that most conversations about work start with is the definition. What is work? You have a different take on that. How did you come across upon that take of how you think about the answer to that question?
Yeah, well, it's, I participate in a lot of conversations with leadership of companies, and the topics in future of work, there are many. They're everything from, automation to reskilling to the gig economy. But very rarely, at least in my experience, do they actually address that more basic question of what should work be? What could work be? Before we talk about technology and all these other things, what is it that work could be? And I just find that the untapped opportunity. I will be generalizing, but I say that when I talk with many CEOs in the privacy of their offices, they only have two questions about the future of work. One question is, how quickly can I automate? Second question is, how many jobs can I eliminate? It's all about cost savings. It's all about cutting costs. And, again, my sense is that's missing a huge opportunity, which is redefining the work for the people that now have freed up capacity, that are no longer consumed with the work they were doing in the past. And so at a very high level, I'll just give you my sense of the transition, the big shift, as I call it, in what work is. Today, in most large institutions, work is tightly specified tasks, highly standardized tasks, so they're done in the same efficient way throughout the organization, and tightly integrated tasks. If you think about that kind of work, tightly specified, highly standardized, tightly integrated, that's what computers can do so much better than human beings. They don't get distracted, they don't get sick. Let's welcome the fact that computers and technology increasingly can do that work for us. Then the question is, okay, if that's being taken by the machine, what can we as human beings do in terms of work? And my view is the opportunity is to focus everyone in the organization on addressing unseen problems and opportunities to create more value. And the problem today is most workers are so consumed with those routine tasks, they can't even see the problems and opportunities. They don't have time to look for the problems and opportunities, much less address them. Now, with the freed up capacity, imagine if every worker in the organization were focused on addressing unseen problems and opportunities to create more value. What value could be created for the company? I think it's a huge opportunity, and it's certainly something I've become very passionate about in terms of encouraging leadership to really address that opportunity.
So your main answer to the question of what should work be is to address unseen challenges and opportunities, right? And
to create more value,
thereby creating more value. Okay. Now, you're obviously dealing mostly with the leaders of larger organizations. You could name a few, but they're pretty much household names. Our audience is mostly going to be the sort of normal grade of a person in that kind of company. Okay, so if you were coming from a bottom up angle on how one could work towards addressing or identifying unseen opportunities and challenges and creating more value, what would be the approach for that?
I think my advice to the frontline workers is to really just make the time to see those problems and opportunities. I mean, they experience them on a daily basis. I mean, particularly the problems. I mean, the barriers that are preventing them from having more impact and value in their work, and just become more proactive in identifying them and communicating them to the leadership, so that now the leadership can see, wow, that was interesting. That person saw that problem. Now let's try to address it. And it starts to motivate the redefinition of the work. And the person who sees the opportunity can say, or the challenge can say, yeah, but I'm so consumed with these other tasks. Can you help me get the computers to take over those tasks so I can focus more time and attention on this? So it creates some motivation for the leadership to start to make that shift. And
Clear. So one way to kind of build that as a habit or as a practice would be to, like you said, carve out the time, let's say a day a week, where instead of doing the nitty-gritty repetitive things that you're always doing some like a higher level thought and analysis, that kind of thing, perhaps?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be done solo. I mean, one of my other themes in my work is increasingly the opportunity and need is for workers to come together in small work groups so that they can learn faster together. And so, one of my key themes is small moves smartly made can set big things in motion. It could be, again, just hypothetically, a worker saying, let me bring 4 or 5 of my colleagues together for 1 hour every week, and let's just brainstorm what are the big barriers that are preventing us from having more impact.
Nice.
And bring people together around this question, and then, again, not just have the meeting end, but take the results of that meeting and present it to the leadership so that they see that there are barriers and that they can be overcome if we could free up some capacity to really address them. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's coming together. I think we'll come up with a lot better ideas if we're working together versus just sitting in a cubicle somewhere trying to think of what the big barriers are.
Very nice. So like one kind of practical nugget that you've just suggested is that any kind of person in an organization taking the initiative, taking the lead to assemble a small work group, with a focused aim of brainstorming about problems. It doesn't have to be super specific. It can just be a session, codifying that, writing it down, sharing it to the relevant, decision maker. It'll also kind of pretty much definitely shine you in a good light in terms of management, for sure. And so that's super practical. Now, are you spending a lot of your time personally keeping an eye on the AI and automation challenge, which is coming upon us?
Yeah, I definitely, I've been in Silicon Valley now for 40 years, so I'm deeply immersed in all the major technologies, including AI. And on the side, I'm on the faculty of a group called Singularity University. And so it brings together leading edge technology experts in all these dimensions. So yes, I very much am following it and trying to understand where its capabilities are. I will say that I'm still, one of my favorite quotes is the painter Pablo Picasso. Many decades ago, in the very early days of computers, he once made the observation, he said, computers are useless. All they can do is provide you with answers. He said, what's really important are the questions. What are the questions? And again, I think that's where AI and human beings can come together and create much more value together, because we as human beings, if we cultivate the capabilities of curiosity, imagination, creativity, can come up with really amazing questions. And then have AI be very helpful in analyzing an extraordinary amount of data and coming up with answers. What are the best approaches or ways of of responding to that question. So I think it's the coming together. I don't view one, it's not one versus the other. It's coming together. We can have a lot more impact.
So you've given us two examples. I was hoping that you were going to mention that Picasso quote, because I had it here in my notes. So nice work. You've mentioned two questions already. Well, three questions. What might work be? What are the unseen challenges, and what are the unseen opportunities? What are some more examples of the kinds of questions that we could, in our own organizations and work groups set, sessions around? Do you have any?
Yeah. Oh, endless questions. I like to say it's the questions that excite me. The answers bore me. It's coming up with the next big question. I think in the context of future work, I would highlight a couple of questions. One is skills all there is? Everybody in future work is talking about reskilling and the need to develop new skills and half-life of skills diminishing, and I understand that, absolutely, that's happening. What's missing from the conversation is, what about capabilities? Why aren't we focusing more on cultivating capabilities? And for me, the distinction is skills are very helpful and useful in a specific context. How to operate this machine in this environment, how to process this kind of paperwork in this environment. That's an important skill, but valuable in a specific environment. In contrast, for me, capabilities, the way I define them, are valuable in every context. And when I talk about capabilities, I'm talking about things like curiosity, imagination, creativity, empathy. Those are things that, again, I think that we as human beings innately have, but need to be cultivated, need to be exercised. And I don't see many companies focusing on how to cultivate those capabilities, except sometimes they'll say, oh, yeah, we need our very senior leaders to be creative. So we'll have a creativity lab for the senior leadership. But frontline workers, why do they need to be creative? They just do their assigned tasks and deliver reliably. And so I think that it's a missed opportunity because, again, those capabilities are very helpful in terms of addressing unseen problems and opportunities to create more value.
Yeah.
So why are we spending more time in developing those capabilities?
So you listed a few there of the capabilities that you'd like to see more, kind of developed, and also these kind of relate to the things that AI isn't going to replace anytime soon. So you said imagination, empathy. What's the list, and what are some exercises that people can use to cultivate those?
Well, curiosity, imagination, creativity, empathy. Those are probably the core ones that I would highlight. There are others, but I think those are the essence. And again, I think that going back to our conversation earlier, this notion of workers coming together for an hour a week to basically ask, what are the big obstacles or barriers that are preventing us from creating more value, or where could we create more value? That cultivates curiosity, it cultivates imagination, creativity, empathy. Those are brought out in those kinds of conversations because you're asking questions about things that people haven't really thought about and require creativity, imagination, empathy. So it's again starting small, but realizing from those kinds of meetings, wow, we came up with some really interesting ideas for how to have more impact. Now let's focus on the approaches required and learning from the approaches, learning through action what really yields the value and the impact that we were hoping for. Okay,
so that's very convenient. So the main way to develop those skills is by just doing that same kind of workshop on a regular basis that we discussed already. I was thinking there'd be some kind of creativity exercises, imagination games, or things like that.
Oh, there are a lot of things you can do. To me, it's embedding it as much as possible in the work you're doing today, because again, the problem I see in a lot of companies is that you have the creativity labs where you take people out of work, give them all kind of creativity exercises
Escape
for an hour or
rooms.
two. Yeah, and then they go back to work and nothing changes. What's different?
Yeah.
Versus tying this back into work to say, apply these capabilities in your work. What is it that you can do, need to do, could do to really have more impact?
Nice. And on the same note, something that I took note of from your work was the idea of returning to the child. I think that is kind of relevant to the creativity and play side, imagination side of things. What are your thoughts there? What's your view?
That's a whole whole other discussion. One of the major objections I get when I talk about creativity, imagination, capabilities is people will say, well, wait a minute, come on, John. Some of us are capable of being creative and imaginative, but most of us just want to be told what to do and get the security of a paycheck. And my response to that is, let's go to a playground and let's look at children 6 or 7 years old and show me one that doesn't have curiosity, imagination, creativity. We all had that as children. What happened? We went to school and we were told to listen to the teacher, memorize what the teacher had to say, and demonstrate that we could play it back in the exams, crushing those capabilities. And it's preparing us for a work environment where you do your assigned tasks, your tightly specified tasks. But I think the image I use, or the metaphor I use, is capabilities are like a human muscle. We were all born with muscles. Some of us chose to exercise them and they became strong and big. Others of us did not. But guess what? The muscles are still there. They may be atrophied, but they're still there. They're waiting to be exercised. And it's our choice whether we exercise them or not. And I think it's the same with capabilities. They're there. They're waiting to be exercised. Let's create the environments that will encourage people to exercise the capabilities.
Yeah. And I think that's extremely, there's a bit of feedback there. I think there's, like in terms of key takeaways from this discussion, building that discipline or taking the initiative wherever you are, whichever work groups you're working in, to take the lead on setting up those conversations, workshops, exploring, setting an intention of deliberately focusing on being creative, using your imagination. There are some kind of exercises, from the improv world. You can't say no to anything. You can only say yes and those kinds of things. I think that that's a very powerful takeaway. I would be, advising that to everyone watching, as well as, applying it myself to my own projects. So thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy about robots restoring humanity.
I gave a talk almost a decade ago now, how robots can restore our humanity. And the proposition that I was advancing was this notion that, again, if you look at the way work is defined today, tightly specified, highly standardized, routine tasks, that's not something that people are particularly good at. I mean, yes, we can do it if we're put in a situation where we have to, but what if we got that work taken over by the machine and we're enabled now with the found capacity to actually do things that we as human beings are uniquely equipped to do? The creativity, imagination, the curiosity, that's how robots can restore our humanity. They free up the time for the workers to actually focus on things that we as humans can and should be doing. and that can create so much more value for the company. It's not just the benefit for the worker, it's the benefit for the company as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I see a parallel between how the agricultural revolution. It was a bit of a scam in that all it did was force people to work in the fields, and in fact they found that agricultural workers worked more than hunter-gatherers. Which was quite a funny kind of reality or whatnot. And then the Industrial Revolution put us all into factories. Now we're in the information revolution. We're in cubicles. We're going to be. So what you're saying is, like, most people really focus on the threat to jobs and everything. You're saying, it's actually going to free us from monotonous work.
Yeah, well, again, if the leadership recognizes that, because, again, I think part of the challenge is the leadership today I'm generalizing, but of most institutions are focused on cutting costs. So their natural reaction is, hey, if the machine's doing the work now, why do I need all these human beings? Let me get rid of them. Mm-hmm. Versus, again, seeing that untapped opportunity and refocusing them on something that could create much more value for the company. Yes. And I'll just say, too, that one of the reasons I'm optimistic about this, I think it's going to be challenging for sure, but at the end of the day, if leadership just focuses on cutting costs, that's a diminishing returns proposition.
Correct.
The more efficient I become, the longer and harder I have to work to get that next increment of efficiency. If I'm focusing on creating more and more value, that's endless. There's infinite opportunity for value. I can accelerate the performance improvement rather than have diminishing returns. And that's ultimately, I think, the companies that see that are going to be the ones that really succeed versus the ones that just focus on the traditional cutting costs mindset.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can only get so far by cutting costs, whereas, like you said, the upside is unlimited, or in terms of creating more value. Very nice. Now, have you been so you've been going through the whole pandemic with everyone. What have you been seeing in terms of the acceleration to remote work? Do you have any unique views on that or insights?
I'm not sure I have unique views. I think that at one level they're calling this digital transformation because everybody now is working from home using computers and Zoom to stay in touch. Technology is the foundation. But the work has not changed. The work that we're doing at home is the same routine tasks that we were doing in the office. And instead of a cubicle in the office, we have a cubicle in our home, some room that the children are not in and that we can be reasonably quiet in. But what's changed? At a fundamental level, the nature of the work has not changed. And I think that's the issue and opportunity is to really rethink. And I would say that at one level, I'm hopeful because there are a lot of stories of large companies, frontline workers in large companies who are confronted with unexpected situations and having to improvise on the spot. The process manual that they have is useless. It's not going to be helpful because the context is so different. And they're improvising and becoming creative on their own initiative, but they're doing it without the permission or mandate of the leadership. They're just doing it because they see the thing that's they can't do their traditional work. So I'm hopeful that leadership will see that, in fact, one of the key ways that we're getting through this crisis is that many frontline workers, not all, but many frontline workers are showing what can be done if you really focus on addressing unseen problems and opportunities to create more value.
Clear. And one thing that comes to mind when you say that is that, whether you're a leader or a frontline worker, very often the innovation and the next big opportunity comes from the frontline workers. So having a mechanism, whether you're a frontline worker, you've taken the initiative to workshop it and push it up the line, or you're a leader and you're asking your frontline workers to, spend some of their time being creative, lest they be automated out. It works from both angles. There should be efforts from both sides. So that's
exactly.
Now, I think we can, work towards concluding. But I wanted to learn more about your most recent book that you've been working on, the Passion of the Explorer.
No, well, the working title, it's still evolving, but is from pressure to passion.
Okay, and, sorry.
It's okay, but it focuses a bit on the passion of the explorer, a lot on the passion of the explorer. The core element of the book is, over my business career, I've been focused on business strategy. I was taught to believe that strategy is everything. Over the years, I've actually come to believe that actually psychology is much more important, that we need to understand the emotions that are shaping our actions, our choices and our actions. And I travel around the world for my work, and this is way before the current COVID crisis. For the past several years, I was struck wherever I was in the world, the dominant emotion that I was encountering was fear. At the highest levels of the organization, at the lowest levels, out in the community.
To this day?
Fear. Sorry?
To this day?
Yes. No, well, even more now. I mean, I think the COVID crisis has intensified this, but a key point in my book is the fear was emerging and becoming more and more prevalent way before the current pandemic.
Right.
Because we are going through major change in our global economy. And I think at one level, it's very appropriate to be afraid. There are reasons to be afraid. But on the other side, I view fear as potentially highly dysfunctional. And to me, the challenge and opportunity is how do we move people from fear to hope and excitement? And in that context, I've become a strong believer. I've spent time studying people in environments where there's sustained extreme performance improvement. And what a common element in all those people is they have a very specific form of passion that I call the passion of the explorer.
Okay.
And so part of the book is how do we draw out that passion that I believe exists within all of us and help us to overcome the fear and address really big, inspiring opportunities ahead.
And are you going to leave us on a cliffhanger? We have to get the book to find out how?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Nice. That'll be for the next episode.
It actually won't be out probably until early next year, but I should say that a lot of the topics we've covered around redefining work and capabilities, et cetera, I've written a lot of research reports on those, and those are freely available. All you have to do is search for my name and redefining work or capabilities, whatever, and you can
the Deloitte research reports, yeah?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Exactly. Center for the Edge.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you, John. Again, it's been amazing. We will obviously put links to the Deloitte Center for the Edge research report section. Do you have any other resources that you'd like to share with people?
Oh, infinite number. I would say that I've written 7 books now, so you can read all 7, but the most recent one that has been published is called The Power of Pull, and certainly would recommend that book.
Which one? That's your favorite?
It's my most recent one, and therefore my favorite one until my new one comes out.
Nice.
That'll be my favorite.
Okay. Well, thanks again. Until the next episode.
Thank you. Appreciate it.